Welcome back to City Foodie Farm. Today, I've got a special recipe for you, a special dessert. We are going to be making an easy apple galette, or as I call it, a rustic apple pie. So brew some coffee and get ready to make this delicious dessert. This apple galette or rustic apple pie is so easy and so delicious. I love apples and I love making desserts with apples, muffins and applesauce. That's one reason we love having an apple tree. We ate all of our apples, but I did pick up these Honeycrisp apples at the store. In this recipe, we are going to be using Honeycrisp. You can pick whatever apples you like, but I think the Honeycrisps give this apple galette a great flavor. And before we get started with this rustic apple pie, if you're new here, please subscribe. And if you like this video or recipe, please give us a thumbs up. Now, let's get back to making that delicious apple dessert. And here's a look at the ingredients we'll be using for this recipe, and I will leave a link below. And one ingredient I forgot to include in this picture is vanilla. So grab a bowl, knife, and cutting board. Start by slicing the top and bottom off your apple. And you'll want to peel each apple. And now that your apples have been peeled, you'll want to take your knife and slice your apples along the core. And you'll be chopping those slices of apples into chunks, little pieces, not too small and not too big, just like this. And now we're going to start adding our ingredients. You'll want to squeeze the juice of 1 lemon on the top of your apples. And if you see any seeds pop out, make sure you grab them. And then mix your apples. And next we'll be adding 1/2 cup of granulated sugar. And now you'll want to add a teaspoon of cinnamon, 1/8 of a teaspoon of allspice, and 1 teaspoon of vanilla. And then add a pinch of salt, and then mix your apple mixture together. Grab a sauté pan and add your 2 tablespoons of butter. And once your butter is melted, you can add in your apples. You'll want to heat your apples on medium to high heat for just a couple minutes. You don't want to cook these entirely because they will be cooking in the oven. But do you see this liquid? That liquid, we will be straining it off and reducing it down to make a glaze. You'll want to grab a cookie sheet, line it with parchment paper, and grab your pre-made pie crust. Make sure it's at room temperature. And you'll want to roll it out and lay it on your parchment paper. And what I did is I kind of spread out the edges. Just be careful because it could rip, but just stretch it out a little bit. You don't need to roll it. You could, I guess, if you wanted to, but I didn't do that. So just kind of push out the edges. The edges are what you're going to be folding in a little bit here. And now you'll want to add back your apples to your bowl and use something to drain the apples. I'm using this handy kitchen tool. I believe it's called a spider. I love this thing. So you can scoop up all your apples, add them to the bowl, and you will leave that liquid in that pot because we will be reducing it so it becomes a glaze, kind of like a thick kind of sauce to drizzle onto your Apple Galette. You'll want to sprinkle on some sugar before adding your apples. Just sprinkle it on the bottom over the whole thing. And then add your apples. And you might have, maybe a spoonful or two left over. And I enjoyed snacking on those. They're so good. So add as much as possible. I started with the center, but then I kind of pushed it out to the edges. And you'll be folding the edges of the pie crust, you'll be folding it over. So grab part of the pie crust and fold it over, and then kind of tuck the other side. And then you can kind of pinch it if you want. It actually stays, so just keep folding it over, pinching it over, just like that, until it's all been folded. And what I love about this Apple Galette or rustic pie, it doesn't have to be perfect. You can fold it however you want. And you'll want to brush the edges with melted butter. Make sure it's all coated. And after you brush on the melted butter, you'll be sprinkling it with some sugar. This is gonna make it taste so good. Just wait. Sprinkle the top of the apples as well. And doesn't that look delicious? Just wait until it's cooked. You'll want to cook your Apple Galette for 25 to 30 minutes at 425 degrees. So as your Apple Galette bakes, you will be making this glaze, this apple glaze. You'll be reducing it down. So you'll want to cook it on medium heat until you notice it thickening. And you'll notice, because of, I'm sure, the sugars, once it starts to thicken, it really gets thick. So try to get it in a container, and then right before you add it to your Apple Galette, you can heat it up in the microwave. And then you can drizzle it on. This glaze tastes amazing. It tastes so apple-y, if that's a word. It's power-packed with apple flavor. And after you drizzle on this apple glaze, you'll want to let it sit for a bit before you cut into it. We recently made this, for Thanksgiving, and we made it several hours before we ate, and we let it just sit, at room temperature. Right before we ate it, we put it in the oven for just a couple minutes to warm it up, and then we cut into it and dished it up. And we served it with vanilla ice cream. And it tasted so good. My husband actually said, "Wow, this tastes just like the McDonald's apple pies." And I knew that he loved it because he loves those pies. And my kids loved this dessert, so I had to share this with you. This is a dessert I will make again in the coming years. I hope you guys enjoy this recipe, and I hope you give it a try. And I just want to say thank you so much for watching and subscribing. And until next time, happy cooking.